right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Adam White, and hopefully you'll be able to see and hear me as I am in Anchorage tonight. Let's see if I can't readjust the camera just a little bit. And of course, sorry about that, Instagram. I am not in my normal locations. It's probably pretty obvious by now that I'm not. I am in Anchorage. Traveling for Alaska Airmen's Business. Came down to Anchorage this morning after I voted, which hopefully you have done that already. You voted. If you haven't, you still got a little bit of time. I think polls close here in about 2 hours. But I came down to Anchorage. Things are getting close enough back to normal that the FAA and other government officials are taking in-person meetings, and well, it looks like Facebook is trying to reconnect, so we'll give those folks just a second to get back connected. Well, looks like Facebook has ended. We are going to try that again with Facebook, so stand by, everybody there on Instagram, while I get Facebook reconnected. That's kind of disappointing that has happened. Sorry about that. We're going to go ahead and close that out and see if I can't get Facebook reconnected. The joys of being live on the internet. So again, bear with me as I get this done here. There we go. We'll just go ahead and go live again with Facebook. So apologize for everybody on Facebook. I just had to reconnect for some reason. The internet is not the best here at the hotel in Anchorage. I came down for some aviation meetings here in the Anchorage area, and so not in the hangar there at the home base in the Nana. I want to go through and just briefly talk about some issues here before we get kicked off again. Some of the things that I've had people contact me about in the past month, some of the things that the Alaska Airmen's Association is working. Let me just go ahead and run down a little bit of a list for us here. So, Lake Hood and transient parking. If you use transient parking at Lake Hood, you'll probably notice that if you don't put your money in the drop box, that Republic Parking, and I'm having an issue again with Facebook, so I apologize for that. I'm just going to keep running here and see if we can't just do this on Instagram, and then we'll figure out what we can do about Facebook a little bit later. So apologize for that, but Republic Parking is handling the transient tie-down fees for Lake Hood. And so if you are using Lake Hood as a transient user, Republic Parking may be reaching out to you to make sure that you're paying your tie-down bill there at Lake Hood. So hopefully folks on Facebook have been able to join us, just mentioning that Republic Parking is handling the transient parking issues there at Lake Hood. They are collecting revenue for the Lake Hood Airport. So if you get something in the mail from Republic Parking, it's legit. I've had several folks reach out to me, say, hey, what is this? This doesn't look official. I've reached out to the airport and asked them to see if they can't add anything to the website for Lake Hood to mention that, so that it's a little bit more official coming in from that direction. So hopefully the connection stays stable enough and long enough to continue here this evening. But some other issues that the Alaska Airmen's Association is tracking right now. Alignigik. You may or may not know where that is. It's in southwest Alaska, close to the Wood River Tachikik State Recreational Area and State Park. Alignigik is a community there that has some concerns about float plane operations, and they actually have an ordinance coming up in their assembly talking about limiting the hours that float planes could operate and limiting the areas of which float planes could operate within the city limits out there. Now, there's already some restrictions in place from the state of Alaska Department of Natural Resources because of the state park and state recreation area in that part of the state. But the city is looking at possibly imposing some fines and a curfew for that. So the Alaska Airmen's Association is looking into more specifics about that and formulating a response as the city weighs in on that issue there in Alignagik. This came up several years ago with the state and with the city at that time, and what's different now is they're proposing adding some fines and a curfew with that operation. Talking about a 400-foot buffer off the shoreline, and from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., I believe, is the hours of operation. Anything after 10 o'clock at night and before 8 o'clock in the morning would be curfewed. So obviously some concerns about that. If you're a float plane operator, if you fly on floats, you know that sometimes you really want to be within 400 foot of the shore. I can tell you a lot of times I don't like being out in the middle of a body of water and trying to land or take off. The waves are different and more pronounced out in open water, and you don't have that depth perception that you need. And so to impose some restrictions on operating close to the shoreline, that is going to be somewhat of an issue and a problem for us. And again, looks like Facebook has jumped off once again. Apologize for that. Spotty internet, even though did a speed test beforehand, and it showed to be plenty adequate to do the task here this evening, but apparently not. So apologize for that. Looking at some other issues that the Alaska Airmen's Association is tracking, as I'm waiting to see if Facebook gets back on. Some more T routes are being published on your sectional charts, and specifically on the low altitude en route charts. You know that several of those new T routes were put on the charts on the last charting cycle, and now there's some new ones that have been added with this chart cycle and even some subsequent chart cycles down the road. We can look for more of those coming up in the future. So keep an eye out for those. Another reason to update your charts and to make sure you've got the latest information there. So it looks like Facebook may have just joined us again. We were talking about new T routes that have been added since the last charting cycle, and there's supposedly some more on a schedule coming out here at the next few chart cycles as well. Also be looking for new restricted areas being charted, especially around the clear R2206. That should be coming out by the end of the year. Something else that the Alaska Airmen's is tracking closely and watching, if you may have seen in the news that Whittier is looking at expanding the docks and cruise ship allocations and more facilities there for that. That would most likely impact the airport there in Whittier, which is not a real big runway, but that is one of the only places to land in the western part of Prince William Sound. And so the Alaska Airmen's Association is following that issue very closely to see what happens there. Some of the other things that we're tracking at this time is the FAA reauthorization is underway in Washington, D.C., and so we're watching that and offering some input to our congressional delegation as to some of the things that we might like to see there as well. EPA came out with their finding on 100 low lead. Nothing has changed specifically today with that. 100 low lead is not going away tomorrow. This is a long process. There is a comment period that's open right now. Alaska Airmen's Association is formulating our comments in response to that. If you'd like to know what the EPA is doing, you can just do a search on any browser, EPA and 100 low lead, and be able to find out what's happening there with that issue. Alaska Airmen's Association is also participating in a working group about the Kenai Peninsula CTAF areas. There's been some concerns and issues coming up there, just like that happened in the Mat-Su Borough several years ago. And so the Airmen's Association is watching that issue and participating in that working group. And once again, Facebook has dropped off. This is kind of frustrating, to be honest with you. Seems like everybody on Instagram is still following along, so we'll just keep talking here and seeing if there's don't see any questions that came up on Instagram here. Just scrolling back through to make sure I don't miss anything. When you're on the road and traveling, you don't have all your normal things set up like I do to do these events, and so I've got things propped up on a work stand here in the hotel room here in Anchorage. All right, a couple other things I want to talk about, but I'd really like for Facebook to be back live with us to make sure we get that out there for everybody. Just as a reminder, with the change of seasons and the time of year, to go through your survival gear and make sure that that you've made sure that you are carrying appropriate and adequate gear for the season and where you might be flying. So if you come off of floats on the wheels or wheels on the skis, perfect time to reevaluate your survival gear and make sure that you've got the appropriate things. There we go. Looks like Facebook just came back up. So I apologize for folks watching on Facebook that we keep dropping out apparently. Just reminding folks to check their survival gear and the change of season, and this is a good time to do that. One thing I want to talk about while I still have a good connection is that there is a experimental study happening in Alaska and in Oklahoma dealing with pilot reports. If you'd like to know more about that and participate, I did put a link on our Facebook page, but if you are interested in filing pilot reports using an automated system, somewhat like talking to Alexa or Siri or Hey Google or any of those other things, pretty interesting study that's happening. If you are flying in the interior part of Alaska, from Fairbanks out west, around within 50 miles of Nenana, you might be interested in participating in this. So you can just do a search on a browser for PIREP Study Alaska. General Aviation News came out with a study or a story on this about 6 days ago. Tom George with AOPA did a web story about it as well. And we have a link on our Facebook page talking about that study. And so encourage you to look at it and see if you would like to participate in that. About 6 months is what the duration of the study is going to be. So I encourage you to participate there if you are flying in that part of the state. And there's even a little bit of a financial incentive if you do participate. So read up on that. It's an interesting deal. So those are the things that I had on my list that the Alaska Airmen's Association is working. Those are not the only things. There's a lot of others that I'm dealing with and tracking for you on behalf of the membership. Those are just the ones I wanted to update you on tonight. Just a reminder that now is the time to start buying raffle tickets for the airplane. Those raffle ticket sales are available online. You can go to our website, alaskaairman.org, and be able to find out more information about how you can purchase raffle tickets online. So I encourage you to do that. They are selling really quick, to be honest with you, which is great because that's how the Airmen's Association funds a lot of our programs, including scholarships, and not limited to that, but also a lot of our youth outreach programs are also funded in large part by raffle ticket sales. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I apologize to the folks on Facebook for the video cutting out. We'll see if we can't still have a valid video link to be able to post on YouTube as a result of all this, but hopefully I'll be back in the normal location in December and be able to have things set up there just a little bit better. Once again, I'm traveling. I'm in Anchorage tonight, getting ready for some meetings tomorrow, and had a great meeting this afternoon, and so looking to do some more things tomorrow on behalf of the Alaska Airmen's Association. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And before I do that, though, I want to again encourage you to vote if you have not voted yet today in the November general election. A lot of things are on the ballot, and it's important that we get out and exercise our privilege and our right to participate in our government by voting. So if you have not done that already, I think the polls close at 8 o'clock. So I encourage you to go do that if you haven't. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and we'll talk to you next time.